What's up, guys? Welcome back to Rosie Wrestling. My name is Saif.
And I'm Massa.
And this is another Rosie Rewind where we look back at past pay-per-views, whether that be for WCW, ECW, WWE, and review them. Today, we're going to be reviewing Bad Blood 2004. The reason we chose this pay-per-view is because we are in the month of June, so I was looking at some past June pay-per-views, and I always don't want to look at like the most popular pay-per-view or anything like that. I just kind of want to look at some of the B pay-per-views during that time. And Bad Blood 2004 seemed like a pretty good option, so we're going to go through it and let's go right in. The first match, we have La Resistance, who are the World Tag Team Champions at this point, and they're going to be defending their title against Edge, and at the time, the World Heavyweight Champion, Chris Benoit. And this is the first of two matches that Chris Benoit is going to have tonight. What do you think of this match overall?
Well, the first thing that I actually noticed through this match, or the first thing that I noticed going into this match is this is the Ruthless Aggression tag teams at the time. You know, you have kind of the not very well-known actual tag teams like La Resistance, Deuce and Domino, those kind of duos, and then you have two singles competitors put together. So I thought that just...
And not just two singles competitors, you have someone who's already booked on the show,
right.
too. And what I found interesting was Sylvain Grenier was actually... since their whole gimmick is they're from Quebec, they were doing the Canadian national anthem, and they were interrupted by Edge, who is Canadian. So very patriotic there from Edge.
Right.
But like you said, two singles guys in Edge and Benoit, who actually I felt like they made a pretty good tag team. Mm-hmm. They had some chemistry. But during this match, I thought it was an okay match, nothing too special. And
we did have Kane's interference.
Yeah, so Kane did interfere, but even before that, Benoit had a crossface on. I believe it was Grenier. It might have been Rob Conway. And the crossface was on for like forever. And I was just thinking about it. I was like, well, Benoit is your world champion. This is his finishing move, and he's doing it against Sylvain Grenier,
right.
And he's not tapping out. So I was like, why are they making the move look so weak? It really did not make sense to me. But Kane did come out, cost them the match. Edge and Benoit actually won by disqualification.
But they didn't win the titles.
But the interference of Kane did make sense. But I didn't like how it made the crossface look weak in that sense.
And then we have a little backstage segment with Coach, Eric Bischoff, and then Eugene. You know, nothing really that special. We just have, it's kind of planting the seeds for the match between Coach and Eugene later on in the night. But next we have Y2J versus Tyson Tomko with Tristratus. And I know that Tomko was doing a lot of things with Christian and Edge and not Edge and Christian. Chris Jericho and Christian had like a little bit of a feud going on over Trish and stuff.
Yeah, and they had their match at Mania, of course, where, Trish aligned herself with Christian and all of that. But this match goes on. Tyson Tomko, his tattoos are awful.
Right.
That's just one of the comments I have. And this was kind of a weird finish. I mean, it was like a running Enziguri to win the match. They didn't even use at least use the lion salt. But he didn't even use that. But it was a running Enziguri, made Tomko look pretty weak. So I wasn't really convinced with that. This match, kind of a nothing match.
Yeah, it was okay. But next we have Randy Orton versus Shelton Benjamin, which just makes me feel really just weird because these guys are actually on the roster today, and I would love to see a match between them nowadays. But first we have just a promo going, and I'm pretty sure that the match wasn't scheduled to be at that point, or it was just in kayfabe terms. So they're like, oh, let's start it right now.
Yeah, because Orton was, he was talking a lot of trash to the fans. He was having an interview, I believe, with Todd Grisham, and then he came out and just started, going at it with the fans. That's when Shelton came out. They announced their match. I thought their match was pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys were... Randy, I felt... This wasn't lazy Randy, so he was still working hard. Shelton, one of the best in-ring performers, so it was a really fun match. These guys were from the same OVW class.
But I also noticed this is the Randy that I actually like. I like how he actually seems like he cares, and you can see that fire. But nowadays, just the difference is insane, and I wish that. I want to see a match with Randy Orton as the old Randy Orton. I was never really a huge fan of Randy, but just at least something.
I do think his character has evolved, though. I don't want this exact Randy, because this is the young legend killer, blue chipper guy. Now he's more of the Viper. His character has definitely evolved. But I thought this was a pretty good match. There were some cool spots. Ric Flair did come out. Obviously Evolution was still a thing. And there was a really cool spot with a figure four.
Oh, I love that spot.
And Shelton, Ric Flair had a figure four on Shelton, and Shelton managed to actually roll up Randy at the time. Randy obviously kicked out, but I thought that was a really cool spot. And there was a lot of roll-up false finishes, which kind of foreshadowed the end of the match where Orton actually won with a roll-up to retain his Intercontinental Championship here. But I think, we said how the tag team division wasn't that good in the Ruthless Aggression era. The mid-card division was really good.
Yeah.
I mean, Randy, Shelton, RVD, Christian, Chris Jericho, some of the best Intercontinental Champions of all time, I think. Or at least in this era, they were really holding down the fort for sure.
And I feel like because the tag division wasn't great, they would just pull people from the mid card because it's so stacked, and they're not really going to miss those guys and just put them in the tag division. But next we have a little segment with Lita and Matt, who are dating at this point, and this whole thing with Kane, I think, was going on as well. And Eric Bischoff as GM was like, well, you have to leave.
Yeah, so he throws Matt Hardy out of the arena. For the match later on in the night.
And then we have the women's match, which was Victoria, who was champion, going against Gail Kim, Lita, and Trish Stratus. And I just want to know, a lot of these girls have so much potential. Later we see Trish and Lita become bona fide Hall of Famers. Victoria's a future Hall of Famer. And then Gail Kim it makes me so sad what they end up doing to her. She's so talented, so much potential. But I just, they really ruined her, and they could have made her into a huge star. But I don't know. I feel like this match was a little bit shorter.
It was rushed for sure.
It was really rushed. It was kind of frantic, and I just feel like, we always think about women's wrestling was really good back then compared to or not back then, more in the not Attitude Era. Trish and Lita, we always think of, oh, these are good women wrestlers. These are what we want to have nowadays. But then you see the frantic pace. I understand maybe it's a fatal four-way and they kind of want that suspicion of, the champion doesn't have to be pinned, so everyone just pinning each other. But I just think that they could have given a little bit more time and a little bit more thought into the match.
Yeah, I think the great thing about Trish and Lita was the fact that they did so well with such little time. Not in this match only, but just in general in their whole careers. Because they never got that much time, but they still managed to take that time and run with it. But this ended up with a Trish Stratus roll-up on Lita to win the Women's Championship. So that's 2 roll-up finishes in a row, and we'll get to that, how a lot of these endings weren't really convincing. But Trish wins the title, and at this point now, she's the 5-time Women's Champion, which is a record.
So for the next match, we have Eugene versus Coach. And I remember the good old days with Coach being, Vince McMahon's right-hand man.
Yeah, and this was actually the first match of the night with a video package.
Right.
So it just kind of shows you that where the... Listen, I love the Ruthless Aggression era, but there was definitely some flaws in it.
Right.
This, I think, was one of them. First of all, I gotta, give a lot of credit to Nick Dinsmore for taking this Eugene character and running with it. He had a featured match at SummerSlam against Triple H. Right. So he really, he did the most he could with this role. And he played it to perfection. Is it a good character? No.
Right.
It's kind of,
offensive.
It is definitely offensive, but he did well with it. Coach, obviously, being a great heel that he is. Coach coming out, he's repping University of Michigan, and they're in Ohio, so, there's rivalry there. So getting that cheap heat.
I thought that this match was fun. There were some fun spots. It
was definitely a comedy match.
It was a very comedic match. Coach just doesn't, he's a commentator now, so it just reminds me a lot of that. And just anytime that Coach commentates over a match, it always just makes me laugh and remember these kind of days.
Yeah, Eugene was riding Coachman like a horse.
Right.
He busted ass in his face. So it just shows you it was definitely a pretty dumb match, but Eugene gets the win here with a people's elbow. So next, now moving on to the World Heavyweight Championship match, the semi-main event, Chris Benoit versus Kane. What did you think of this match?
I thought that it was actually a pretty good match. I actually did enjoy the they're playing up the sharpshooter, and I feel like it kind of made...
It took a while for him to really lock in that sharpshooter.
And then in the end, we do have the cripple or crossface, and we do have the story is there with, especially in the beginning, Kane didn't interfere. I felt like there was a few spots that I didn't exactly enjoy. I felt like there were some things that were a little bit on the slower side. But overall, I actually did enjoy this match.
I actually think this was the match of the night.
Right.
I think it was very underrated. historically. I'm not saying it's a classic, but Benoit didn't have the best of reigns, but here I think this was a pretty decent match. But actually Benoit gets a roll-up win here, so it just shows you that so far in this night, we have Edge and Benoit winning by disqualification, Y2J winning with a run-up enziguri, Orton winning with a roll-up, Trish Stratus winning with a roll-up, and then the Eugene match was probably the only one with a convincing finish. So here already, where I'm just kind of like, that's kind of some lazy booking. I understand you want to make everyone look strong, but at the same time, you need some convincing finishes, especially for your World Heavyweight Champion, Benoit.
I think it would have made sense if he actually tapped out, or even just at least like a
win with a diving headbutt or something like that. But I know Kane, they're playing him up as this monster, and Kane plays this role to perfection, obviously.
He's amazing.
Now we move on to the long main event. We have about an hour left into the show. Shawn Michaels versus Triple H in the Hell in a Cell match. Very controversial match. These guys did get a long time. Obviously, it was like a 48-minute match. What do you think of them main eventing this show?
See, I remember a few weeks ago we were actually talking about this, and I'm kind of old school, and I think, the world title should always main event unless it's a huge circumstance, like a retirement or like a big deal. But I understand, like, you even said, name a time where the Hell in a Cell didn't main event. So I kind of understand that because it is the Hell in a Cell. But I don't know. I do like the idea of having, your world champions looking strong.
I think the only reason people are not accepting of this main eventing is because it wasn't a great match.
Right.
If this was a 5-star classic, no one would have cared. I do think this should have been the main event. It's the Hell in a Cell, first of all. It's a story that's been going on for
like
around 2 years at this point. Let's think recently. Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa main evented TakeOver, not Aleister Black and Andrade. And no one complained about that.
Right.
So I don't really like this double standard. I know it's Triple H. I know it's Shawn Michaels. People who have a lot of sway backstage, who kind of probably played their politics to get this in the main event. But at the same time, I do think it makes sense. So I think it's unfair to criticize these guys because it is a Hell in a Cell. It's a long brewing story. So I don't disagree with it. However, the match itself did drag.
It did.
It was a really, really long match. I'm not going to say cut in half. That's a little bit short. But they could have cut maybe 10 minutes from this match.
Right. And the thing is, like, well, we were actually watching this together, and we were laughing and talking about other stuff. So I feel like for me, I didn't feel like it was that long. I didn't feel that 48 minutes, but it was because you were there. The story here was there, and I can't deny that. I just felt like the back and forth action kind of just didn't really...
I can respect that it was a war. They were bleeding, and it was some really cool spots. However, at one point, maybe 20 minutes, there was a 20-minute span where literally it was just spot, sell, spot, sell. Like, that's literally it. Spot, and then they were selling for on the ground for a lot. It really dragged. I think it should have been maybe 10 minutes shorter. And
what it makes me think about a lot is the Hell in a Cell match between Batista and Triple H, where it's kind of the same story of like just a full-on, like they both want to murder each other. But that match was so much better, and they were able to tell story better. And I know, like, Triple H and Shawn Michaels, like, Shawn Michaels is one of the greatest, like, in-ring performers, and Triple H is such a great, like, heel character, and they both can play really well. But I just think the fact that they gave them so much time, it was like, we don't know what to do in this time, so let's, like, sit on the ground and, like, about to cry for, like, 10 minutes, for a lot of it.
But overall in this pay-per-view, I think it was a pretty decent pay-per-view. It wasn't, like, anything spectacular. A lot of, throwaway stuff, but...
They could have gave more time to the women's match.
They could have gave more time to a lot of matches.
Right, just cut that off.
Cut a little bit out. But overall, I don't think this is a perfect representation of the Ruthless Aggression era. Maybe I'm biased because I love that era so much.
Yeah, that's my favorite era.
But, there was some better pay-per-views. But I just wanted to pick a June pay-per-view and to pick Bad Blood. It was pretty decent. If you guys have watched it, please tell us your thoughts in the comment section below.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Rosie Wrestling, and we'll see you guys in our next video. Bye!